You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome back to Horror Ramblings, your spooky source for all things horror. I am your host, Stephen White, and with me this time is my co-host, Katrina.
Hello.
Lester is out this week, off on his own little adventures with his family, so we decided we would take the reins for episode 50. We've hit 50 episodes of this podcast, not counting the one little special we had somewhere down the line. We were trying to figure out what would be a good choice. I was trying to think of something big, but then I just said, screw it. We'll just defer to Katrina. What do you got? And she recommended we watch Crimson Peak.
Yes.
And why did you want to talk about that movie specifically? Like, what was it about it that sparked your fancy?
Well, because as you know, I'm not a huge horror movie person. I've definitely gotten more into it over the years, but I'm still very cautious when it comes to horror movies, and specifically ones that have ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my biggest, it still terrifies me. If I was to watch one of the Paranormal Activities, I couldn't walk through the house in the dark. Like, that's how scared it makes me. But Crimson Peak is one of those ghost stories, like I think I've brought up before, like Haunting a Hill House and Haunting a Bly Manor, where the ghosts aren't bad.
Right.
They're there as a warning, or they're trying to help the person or something like that. Even Sixth Sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the ghosts aren't bad. So once you learn that, or at least for me, once I learned that, it was one of those oh, I like this movie. And it's one that I've gone back and watched several times because I love the cast in it, especially the two main characters. And I don't know, I just love the story behind it because it's one of those, it's labeled as a romance horror, and that's exactly, what it is.
Mm.
And it's a tragic story, but I feel like it's beautifully written, and I love the effects and everything else in it.
Right. Now, this was one that I remember we had watched at one point, I'd say sometime after it released. I know we watched it together because it came out in 2015, but I don't think I'd watched it since because I remembered bits and pieces of it, but we rewatched it so I could have it fresh in my memory to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And there were elements to it that I remember, and then other bits are a little hazy, like I could remember certain details, but I wasn't 100% sure about everything. The cast, I pretty much remembered most of everybody, and then I saw a few faces. I was like, oh yeah, I didn't realize they were in here, so that was kind of nice.
Was one of them Jim Beaver?
He was somebody I did not remember being in the movie. Yeah, Jim Beaver, if I'd say most of our listeners would probably know from Supernatural.
Yes, as Bobby.
And yeah, I mean, I always like him as an actor. I mean, I was never a big Supernatural fan. I didn't watch it religiously like some people who watched all 15 seasons, which kudos to you if you made it that far, because I know they were never meant to go past 5, I think. So an extra 10 is just amazing. But now I remember seeing him, I think in Deadwood is where I first saw him and took note of him. And that's actually the role that got him the role here was his role in Deadwood. So,
well,
but I want to talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff to kind of get that out of the way. Directed and co-written by Guillermo del Toro, who people should know from Shape of Water, Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy 2. He did the most recent Pinocchio on Netflix, the stop motion animated. I mean, the man's done a lot. Pacific Rim. Well, I don't know if did he direct Pacific Rim? He may have. I think he did. He did. I was trying to roll that in my head. Yeah, I think he directed that and a handful of other. I mean, the list could go on, but he's done a lot of great work, and I have a high respect for him.
You know, he's one of those like Tim Burton who has a style to him.
And he's very... well, let's talk about the style of the movie for a minute, because that's one thing that's very unique about it. Because for me, based on what I kind of saw, like the aesthetic, there's something about the film that feels like it could have been a movie made back in the 1930s. Or maybe even the 1950s and 60s, and I'm kind of relegating it to like Universal horror or even Hammer horror, kind of those genres or time periods of horror, mainly because there's an aesthetic to it visually. Like if you put it in black and white, maybe even gave it some grain and maybe tweaked a few things, I could believe that this would have been made back then, or a version of this could have been made back then. Maybe not as extended, maybe not as elaborate in certain areas, but there was just certain aesthetics to it that felt like those movies, like he was paying homage to a lot of those movies. Because, like you said, it's not necessarily a horror movie directly. It's a romantic horror movie, I guess, in some aspects, a mystery. There's a lot of elements to it that are in play there, so that when you look at the beginning, the way the aesthetics go, the dance and the dance hall and the meetings that they had, I don't know, there's just something about it. Like I can see those scenes in those early horror films, like Dracula or Frankenstein, or even to some degrees the Wolfman, Invisible Man, things like that. Just the settings and the aesthetic could easily have been a movie made back then, just not with a lot of the technology that they had and a lot of the fancy camera works and whatnot. Like I could see it.
I mean, I feel like they do have a lot of like the horror movie tropes in a sense that even, new horror movies still do with, you're kind of focused on the foreground, and the background you see something move, or, out of the corner of your eye you see something there and then it's not there, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like obviously with the story it fits in absolutely perfectly. And he does it in a way where like there's one scene, and it seriously gets me every fucking time, with the door, and she's Edith, which is one of our characters, she is the main character, is walking down the hallway in the mansion, and she hears the dog whining, and she's like, how did you get in there? And opens this closet and has it, kind of cracked, and you see, and there's nothing there. And then you hear the dog whining, and she looks and sees the dog, and as it kind of pans back, there is a fucking face there. And it is a terrifying looking face, because that is definitely one thing they do. None of their ghosts come off any sort of friendly.
No.
They are all absolutely fucking terrifying, more than the Sixth Sense ever did.
Yeah.
I'd say even more than like Haunting Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor. Because Hill House, the crook neck lady was really the biggest creepy one out of it. And then Bly Manor would be the woman with the, no face, the creepy strong one that pulls everybody into her little vortex.
Sure.
But anyway, every single fucking one of them are terrifying. And there are so many jump scares. And as we were watching it, I literally like called one, like the next one that was gonna happen. I was like, cue jump scare, and then bam, happened.
But again, you've seen it quite a few times, so you're aware.
And they still get me. That's the sad part.
Now, in regards to some of the visuals, like you were talking about, where they do use a lot of modern aesthetic, where you have things in the background kind of floating by, they're a lot of the time, I mean, they do have the jump scare bits, but sometimes they're very subtle, and they can just be in passing, but they're there. I remember one that I thought was really interesting is when she was going up into the attic and she
Mm-hmm.
passed by the chair that's had the sunlight kind of hit on it. And
Yeah.
if you pay attention, you kind of see a silhouette. You see kind of an arm hanging off the
Mm-hmm.
chair, and it's not blatant, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can blink and miss it if you're not paying attention, but it's all kind of just there. And then there are other scenes where you kind of see, like you said, things passing off in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But one element to this that I'm really glad that he was actually made to wait to make this movie, because apparently he had written this, I think, almost 10 years prior to filming. And I think this was right after Hellboy. He'd kind of co-written it, or kind of had a script, and they were working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he could have probably tried to direct it right then, but he was made to wait because there were some other projects that he had kind of going on. Because the man, this is one thing I'll say about Guillermo del Toro, you'll hear he's connected to so many projects, and they never get off the ground. He's always got something burning, so it's not a matter of not being able to. He's got a lot of great things he wants to do,
Yeah.
and maybe sometimes you don't have the capital, you don't have the funding behind it, so he can't do them. But this was one of those that I think he was just committed to so many things
Mm-hmm.
that he just was not able to get around to it. And the reason I say that I think it was a good thing is the technology got
Mm-hmm.
better over the span of 10 years that
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that had he done the movie when he wanted to initially,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the ghost effects would have been as good, because what he does is what most filmmakers should do, and that is utilize live action and CG combined to make that work. Because to my understanding, Doug Jones, which is his frequent collaborator, guy did like Abe Sapien and Hellboy,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the fish man in Shape of Water. I mean, the man is a suit actor. You know, that's kind of his thing. And honestly, I think he would be a great replacement for Anthony Daniels when he passes to be 3PO. That's my own personal opinion. Whether he wants it, that's debatable.
Yeah.
But he has the makeup, he has the look
Mm-hmm.
thrust upon him, and then they enhance it with the special effects, the CG, to kind of give it more damaged facial features, more, kind of give the crevices that makeup can't do,
Mm-hmm.
and really give it that disturbing look, so it looks tangible. You look like you can touch it, and even as it's moving, it doesn't have that CGI walk or movement where it just something off about it. You know what I mean?
And that's one of the cool things that they do with the ghost. At least I feel, and I feel like the best scene where you can kind of see it happen is they go from that really kind of wispy, ghosty form to, like you said, that tangible,
Mm-hmm.
Type form. And the mother's ghost in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Like you see just almost like an outline of her, and then it's like it comes and it just starts filling in, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, that bitch's hand like pops out, and it's solid.
Yeah. So I honestly think that it was to the film's benefit that he had to wait, and
Oh yeah.
obviously that allowed him to kind of refine it as he needed, but I don't know if that was also beneficial or not, because I will say one gripe I will have about the movie is it could use a little trimming here and there on the editing floor. It could have used it, because it could move a little faster, because there were a few moments where I was like, okay, we could kind of move this along a
Yeah.
little bit, because it drags at times, but that's not wholly bad. Sometimes it's for atmosphere, sometimes you're trying to build to something, so I understand what he's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not interesting enough,
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes it can lose your audience. And I feel like in these instances, sometimes it wasn't enough to kind of keep me 100% engaged, because once things start to ramp up, I'm back in.
Yeah.
Once they kind of get to that slow drip, it's just like, you're kind of losing me a little bit. And I hate when movies do that, because it feels like I don't have the patience for it. And I can, I've sat through tons of 3-hour movies. I can do it, with the right movie, but sometimes I get, squirreled and I'm off somewhere else. But anyway, Okay, let's talk about the cast.
Yes.
So, first things first, we'll start with Mia. I've always been not able to say her name. Waskawaska. Waskawaska. Mia Waskawaska. Does that sound right? That's what it looks like. I'm going to see if there's a proper enunciate. Oh, Washikovska. Okay, I've said it way wrong. Washikovska. Mia Washikovska. Okay, we're just going to call her Mia from now on, or Edith, so I don't have to say that again. But she is our lead in this in this movie is Edith Cushing. Cushing. There's a nice horror reference. Cushing, Peter Cushing. He was one of the actors in the Hammer horror films. He played Van Helsing in the Dracula film in the Hammer horror movies. So that's kind of a homage to an actor. And fun little facts about the role here is initially the actress cast for this role was Emma Stone.
Really?
Which, in my mind, I don't think works. Now, I like Emma Stone. I think she's a great actress. But, and understand what I'm trying to say here. I mean no disrespect, but there's something about Mia's look that feels like it belongs within that time period. Whereas Emma Stone has a more modern beauty appeal that doesn't quite fit that aesthetic in my mind. Now, again, not saying that Mia's not attractive. I just mean that there's just something about her look that screams like it just fits with an older time period. You know what I mean? Like, there's just some people who have faces that just like, oh yeah, they came from the 19th century or 20th century or something like that. You know, they just have a look.
I feel like for me, the thing that makes Mia perfect for the role is I feel like she literally just fits into this kind of universe. Because what other movies have we seen her in? She was Alice, was she not?
Was Alice in Alice in Wonderland. So
and even that, like, she's just, like...
It had a gothy feel. So, and this definitely has that gothy Victorian era feel.
Yeah, and, like, I mean, she's, like, blonde, but her hair's just, like... I don't know. She just has this really unique look. Like, the woman herself, not the character. Right. You know, Mia herself. So, like you said, like, I can't imagine anyone else playing this role other than her.
And even the way she kind of comes off, kind of the meekness that she has, where she has self-doubt, she plays that so well. Like, we saw that in other movies, and here she does that as well. Again, Emma Stone, she maybe could do that, but I've never seen it. So perhaps there might be a role out there that would beg to differ. But for me personally, I don't see that coming out of her. So it's a little harder to sell for me. So I think she was perfectly cast, and I'm glad that Emma Stone dropped out. And again, she probably did something better, or maybe not. I don't know. But I think it was scheduling conflicts is the reason she had to bow out. So I'm just kind of I'm glad it was her that got the role, because she was second in line. Now, also funny enough, speaking of the next actress I want to talk about, Jessica Chastain, who plays Lucille, she was actually offered the role of Edith, but after reading the script, she wanted to be Lucille. Like, she felt like that was a better character for her.
Damn.
So she talked to Guillermo del Toro, said, I think this would be a better fit for me. It's more of a challenge, and she took that role on. So again, better fit. I think she was perfectly cast as well in that, because again, I don't know if, I mean, she may have been able to pull it off, but again, I feel like Mia is the proper choice here. So I think it worked out to their benefit. You know, everyone got the role that they should have had.
Yeah.
And okay, here's another one. Since we're talking about that, Tom Hiddleston is Thomas Sharp. Now, here's another casting dropout. Original cast member was Benedict Cumberbatch. And here's now, I don't know the specifics behind it, but he dropped out. This is what I've heard. How true a lot of this is, I'm not 100%, but he dropped out when Jessica Chastain took the role of Lucille. And he said it was amicable, but there was just, I don't know if they have because to my understanding, they have a friendship, like they're buds.
Okay.
So maybe there was just something about the way the story is told that just felt like,
there is that one scene.
Yeah. So maybe it was just uncomfortable for him, and it was like, nah, I'd rather not. And that's why he just kind of like bowed out. So that's understandable.
I mean,
if it was something like that.
That's okay, because no offense to Benedict Cumberbatch, but I got to see Tom Hiddleston booty, so
and
it's okay. I mean, I can see his booty some other time. I'm sure he shows it at some point.
But I would honestly have to feel it would have to be that one scene in the movie, because he was on board if she was playing Edith, but it was the moment she took Lucille, he was out.
Yeah, I would say that it's probably that one scene.
Yeah. But again, I think Tom Hiddleston is better for the role, because there is something. Now, I like Benedict Cumberbatch a lot, and there's just something about Tom Hiddleston. I think we even said it as we were kind of watching it. He's just got a charm about him.
Oh, yes.
And
he's so freaking charming.
And I'm not saying that Benedict Cumberbatch can't do that, but I guess I've never seen that charm exude from him like Tom Hiddleston. Tom Hiddleston just has it naturally. He just lays it out.
I mean, this man, and this is one of my favorite clips of him, is like the whole cast of Avengers and shit comes walking out on the stage, and they're all, in their normal clothes, and they're doing the normal wave and all this type of shit. Tom Hiddleston comes out in full Loki fucking get up and stands there like, worship me. And the crowd goes wild because fuck yes, we will worship you.
Yeah. So I think he was also perfectly cast, and he even felt
100%.
I read this as far as trivia. He and apparently Benedict Cumberbatch are also really good friends. And he wanted to make sure it was okay to take the role after he passed. And he called him up and he's like, would you be all right with that? And he's like, oh, hell yeah, go for it, dude. So like he was excited for him to take the role. So he was, all in. He got the role. And again, I think he was a great addition. I think he did everything the way, because he can be menacing, he can be charming, he can just, he can hit every little element, and he does it so perfectly. So I think that was a great choice. Then Charlie Hunnam, he plays the Dr. Alan McMichael.
Yes.
And I guess he doesn't have a lot to do in the movie, because he's kind of at the beginning and he's at the end and he's sprinkled around in the middle. So I can't really speak to his character in the movie, or like he did just amazing. I mean, he was fine, but there was nothing about him or his character that just stood out as like, God, man, he just nailed this. It was just, he was doing good. I mean, he did fine.
Well, it's funny because it's like he is the knight in shining armor. But when you think about it, did he actually help Edith?
I mean, he just helped her kind of distract everybody from killing her so she could get out. That was about all he did.
She still had to end up taking out. I mean, she still had to fight for her life with no help.
Sure, but he gave her kind of a distraction to kind of help her recoup a little bit so she could kind of get back on her feet.
Gotcha.
So I think that's what he did. He was a good distraction.
I mean, I think it's an awesome story, because he kind of, like I said, shows up to be a knight in shining armor and then gets stabby, rip, stabbed. And then it's more, her hiding him and then going off to fight the bad, and boom. Like that's the end of the story, them walking away as she helps him, like, support him on a broken fucking leg.
Yeah. So
she's a boss ass bitch.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I guess we can get into the story overall. So it kind of starts with what seems to be kind of we're showing the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie, that old trope.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of like, okay, well, some bad shit's happened, but you don't know exactly. You just kind of get a sense that something just happened. And then she kind of mentions, I believe in ghosts, kind of has a little speech there about it. And then we go to New York in, what was it, 1880s ballpark? That's what I'm going to assume. I think that was about right.
I don't remember.
Oh, we're going to say 1880s. That sounds about accurate. And... she is a writer. She's trying to kind of get herself, or she's trying to be a writer.
You skipped over an entire portion of the beginning of the story.
Okay, well, tell me what I missed, because I'm trying to piece together.
Okay, so when the story, opens,
Mm-hmm.
when she's talking about how, she believes in ghosts.
Sure.
She's talking about how she believes in them because she's seen them, and then talks about how her mother died of, some kind of plague or something, got sick and died while she was a child. And as she is, having this flashback, and she's a little girl laying in bed, and she hears something, and she looks down the hallway, and here comes creepy fucking ghost. And she rolls back over like any child would, and, kind of scared and panicky. And then that hand comes up over. That's like the first big jump scare. And then it's like the first sense you get as the ghosts aren't going to be bad.
Right.
Because this, again, this woman's wearing like black, funeral attire, and her face is literally a fucking skeleton face already. And she just sits on the bed and literally like lays with her child and tells her child that when the time comes, beware of Crimson Peak. Which is the whole plot line of the entire story.
Okay, well, excuse me. I forgot that one little detail.
And then away we go to the future where she is a writer. Take it away, Stephen.
Where she is trying to be a writer. She seems to regard Mary Shelley as her muse, which, again, I feel like fits with that character. It fits with the aesthetic that I was talking about. Everything in the movie, as you kind of look at it, kind of going back to aesthetics, and did you notice how, I don't know, I don't want to say bright, but the colors are so rich.
Yeah.
In every scene, it's not like vibrant. They're just rich colors. Like everything is just, it doesn't seem tempered. It doesn't seem grayed out or lower contrast. It's just like, it's dark, but just deep colors.
And I wonder if that was almost like intentional, because if you notice, obviously in the city you get all those different colors. There's lots of yellows and blues and just an array of pretty colors,
right?
And then as you get further into the story, it's just dark and depressing and white and red.
Yeah. And I would say, based on just what I kind of know, and just even some of his influences, my S has got away from me there. I would say that he was kind of borrowing certain looks and designs, cinematography wise, through like Mario Bava from Italian cinema, did like Bay of Blood and things like that, because there's a similar aesthetic to it when you're looking at, if you do comparisons. Because again, I think I appreciate that with certain horror films, because even today I've noticed, and we've discussed this on many occasions, if this movie were made today, now under someone else's guidance, I think he still would have managed to make sure everything was fine. But everything's so dark now, and I don't understand how we went from trying to light everything just a certain way to just everything looking so dark where you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And it's gotten really bad over the last few years, where anything that's dark, or it needs to be dark and moody, it's like they just turn off the lights and said, yeah, just turn on the camera. And it's like, but I can't see anything. Yeah. Like, there's no light. You're not lighting this up. You're not doing your job. So I really appreciate that we can see everything happening. There was never a moment where I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, even in like the pitch black hallways, you can still see all the way down that damn hallway.
Yeah. It's like he had it all mapped out. The scenes were laid out proper. He made sure you could see every element, every outline, anything that needed to be seen in the light, you could see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't understand why we've gotten away from that. But anyway, I digress. So she meets up with, or we kind of run into Charlie Hunnam's character, the doctor, and kind of get to know him. We meet her father, get to know him, and then eventually we get around to meeting Tom Hiddleston, and we find out he's in town trying to secure funds, and obviously he's going to her father to do so, but they decline his offer, and then he seems to take a shine to Edith, but as we kind of progress through the story, we find out there's hints that it's more than just, romance. That there's I would say it was pretty early on, I guess, after their little interlude in the park, that we got an understanding that this is not a coupling for romantic sakes, but a coupling for other purposes, nefarious purposes, because the sister makes mention he's trying to get a ring from her, and obviously that's for marriage, but the father is kind of hip to the guy. He's kind of wise to him, so he decides to have him investigated. The investigator, here's another frequent Guillermo del Toro collaborator, Bern Gorman, who has just got a very unique face.
Yes, he does.
And every time I see him pop up, I'm like, hey, it's that guy. So it was kind of nice to see him. Very bit part, but he does what he's there to do. He's just an investigator and kind of whips out some information, but they never tell us what it is. And I came close to asking you if I missed something, but I thought, well, they're probably holding back on that information on purpose. So I'm gonna, just bite my tongue.
Yeah. Because
they didn't really quite tell you what it was. And then when the father presents this information to Lucille and what's his name? Thomas. I don't know why I couldn't figure that out. His name is Tom. But Tom and Lucille, because he wanted to talk to them together, he told them that they needed to skip town. He's going to write them a check, get the hell out of Dodge, leave my daughter alone, and that's that. And they oblige, but then next thing you know, he's dead, and Tom Hiddleston's running back saying, oh, he made me do it, and I love you so much, and we're going to go run off and get married and go live in England or wherever he lives.
Yeah.
In Crimson Peak, or I know that's not the name of the town, but the what was it? Adderson Hall or
Something like
that. Adderall Hall.
Adderall Hall.
Yeah, or something like that. I can't remember the name of the manor. But when we get to the manor, okay, so I understand they're in dire straits and they're trying to get money. But they did get money at some point because he's working on that damn machine that he was trying to get funding for.
Yeah.
Why didn't they use that to fix the roof on the house? I understand there's a lot that needs to be done in that house, but the roof. Why didn't you fix the roof? Why leave a hole in it so when you come in, there's leaves just falling on the ground.
And snow.
And snow later on when it gets cold.
Yeah.
Fix the roof.
I don't know.
I mean, all you got to do, just the top. If you want to leave the rest of it, fine. You'll get to it later, but just fix the roof.
I don't know.
I don't know. Aesthetically, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But from a logical perspective, fix the roof.
Yeah.
Just get some wood, go up there, panel it up, fix the roof. Because you can't tell me that's helping the draft. I mean, there's such a draft in that house. You can't tell me there's not. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense. But after they get there, Edith starts checking out the house, but she's also getting ghost vibes. She's starting to see things. She runs into a dog, which that was a clue that they kind of laid out there, is that when he saw the dog, she's like, well, you never told me you had a dog. And he's like, oh, yeah. Like, he just, I don't know, spaced on it. And you feel like if you did have a dog, oh, yeah, I have a dog. You would bring that up. But it's like he forgot that there was a dog even there. And obviously that plays in later. But she starts seeing visions. She starts seeing ghosts and little creepy things. And if I'm missing anything, let me know, because I'm trying to remember bits and pieces. Because this is about the time I felt like it slowed. Like the brakes started being put on. Because there were things happening, but it wasn't super, like we're trying to build that atmosphere, but it was slowing down. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, it's like they're already married. They get to the house. They get in. They meet the sister.
Yeah. Well,
And
they had met Lucille prior.
well, yeah, I meant they meet her at the house.
I got you.
Then they kind of, usher Edith upstairs and, give her a bath and all that kind of stuff. And they get her tea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that they do throughout the movie is serve her tea. She drinks the tea, and then the next thing you know, she's waking up.
Yeah.
So her first night in the house was just very rushed and pushed, and then, fell asleep and woke up.
And we didn't even mention, like, the outside of the house itself. So one of the things that this house is sitting on is, like, this large deposit of red clay.
Yeah.
Which creates kind of the interesting atmosphere outside the house as well as inside, because as he Tom walks over to a spot in the ground and just kind of pushes his foot down, and it's almost like the ground is bleeding.
Yeah.
But
And this is inside the house.
Yeah.
Like he is stepping on planks inside the house, and it is like oozing this thick red watery clay.
And it makes you wonder, the clay had to have been there. Like, when they built the house, they had to know it was there. So, why build a house on a big deposit of red clay? And, again, another interesting thing that they just kind of left out. Again, aesthetically cool, because even that was part of the thing about the Crimson Peak term, was during, was it when it snowed?
Yes, during winter when it snows, everything's white because it's a very flat piece of property, but the clay soaks up through the snow, so it turns it all red.
Yeah, and then hence you get the
And
term.
when we say red, if you have not seen this movie, we're not talking like red clay that you can find anywhere naturally. Like, this does not exist because it is like blood red.
Yeah.
Extreme fucking red.
But what's interesting is it's also the deep blood red color is then kind of the actual red used throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Like, everything red that you see is that red.
Yeah.
It's not a variation of the red, a lighter red. Everything is that red. And it's almost telling in some ways that it's trying to alert you to the danger if you pay attention to it. Because even the very first time we see Lucille, she's in a red dress, that same red color.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost telling you, problem, big red flag, because even all your ghosts, even though they're not bad, but they're a warning.
Yes,
so
outside of the mother's ghost.
Yeah.
But all of the ghosts in the house are that exact red.
Mm-hmm. So I would kind of take that as her wearing that red dress is like, warning.
Yeah.
Warning, pay attention. The red ball of the dog. Warning, there's something wrong here. So through a few nights, she has encounters. As you said, she's having the tea and she's just having these moments. And it wasn't until, unless I'm forgetting a bit, because as all this is going on, she's kind of investigating the house. She's kind of looking around. She finds, they told her that there was Tom told her they have a freight elevator, or I don't really feel like it's a freight elevator. It's one of those indoor elevators that old houses have. I don't remember what they kind of call them.
Not so much a freight elevator. It's almost like a single person elevator.
Yeah, but they have them in big mansion houses or whatnot. I can't remember the specific term, but he said just don't go to the bottom floor. Obviously, she's going to, but it wasn't like she just chose to go down there. A ghost kind of chased her down, almost guided her, but it was through kind of a chase in a way. Pushed her in that direction to guide her down there. She goes down there and she finds like these big tanks or
tanks. I feel like would be a
these big tanks of
term.
Red clay, but it's very liquidy. And then she finds like a foot locker or a chest, whatever you call it, that has the initials ES on it. So that kind of piques her curiosity. It's like, I wonder what that is. And meanwhile, Tom is getting his machine all put together, trying to get that working. It seemed like it was working just fine, but I don't really know what he's needing it for. I know that he was talking about for capital, but
To basically dig out the red clay.
Ah, gotcha. So all that for just one machine in this one place. Why not? I mean, there practical uses around the world. You could sell that invention and just make millions, you'd think, or thousands. Remember, this is 1880s. They can only make thousands, not millions. We heard this joke. What was it? Argate? No, it was Three Stooges. He was like, "Hey guys, this will make you thousands of dollars." Anyway, again, her curiosity just kind of keeps getting the better of her, and she keeps catching these little clues and hints, trying to figure out what's going on. And then there was where did she see the name?
It was on the chest, on the lock.
Oh yeah, so it was Enola,
Mm-hmm.
was written on the chest. And eventually she finds a key, or sees a key.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, wait a minute, I'm getting into myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was after they had went into town. Like Edith and Tom had gone into town for the night.
Well, she had found the chest and everything before they went into town. She has another fright. And this one is, what was it? I think she hears like a scream or something in the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
And when she goes in there is what we talked about earlier. You kind of see like an outline, and then it kind of fills in, and then it's who she doesn't know, but it's the mother.
Right.
And she's got like this big ass machete or hatchet or whatever in her skull.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of gets up out of the bathtub, and I don't remember what she says, but she says something to Edith, and it scares Edith so much that she runs out and starts screaming for Tom.
Yeah.
And when they kind of get her downstairs and try to calm her down and everything, and she's talking about the ghost that she saw and everything, and that she needs to leave, and that she's basically going crazy.
Yeah.
And after they get her to bed, give her more tea, put her to bed, Thomas talks to his sister and says that he has to go to the post office tomorrow, so he's going to take her with him, so that way she can get fresh air. And then the next day they go to the post office, and then they end up getting snowed in, and they stay at a little inn, I guess, at the post office.
Well, it was kind of like I think they said that they had like a little cabin or
it's
something.
like a little spare room.
Yeah, some place they could just hunker down for the night.
But
since
they
the storm
officially spend their first married night and consummate the marriage.
Mm-hmm. But we did mention, or we didn't mention, what's been happening with the tea is that she had been waking, or eventually she started waking up coughing up blood.
Yes.
And at first, if you're not aware of what's happening with the tea, then you'll just kind of be like, oh, well, that's weird. That's strange. But obviously we'll find out about the tea later on that that's connected. But yeah, they're in the little room, consummate the marriage, and you kind of saw that he had been, I don't want to say being distant per se, but he just kind of been like, we'll get there maybe. And suddenly in that moment, everything just kind of changed, and then his feelings changed, because you could see that he was, jumping for joy. And same with her. When they got back home, they're just happy and just skipping, just woo, and everything like that. Now, while they were there, she also got 2 letters.
Yes.
One was from back home, which came from her dad's lawyer, because we even glossed over his death, where he got his head smashed in with the porcelain sink. God.
Well, we mentioned the head smashed.
Yeah, but Jesus Christ, that was
it was brutal.
Like, you just felt the head smashing. It was like, God damn. But anyway, she got papers from the lawyer back home, and then she had a second letter that was addressed to her, but her married name, and it was from, they didn't say who it was from, but it was addressed from Milan, Italy.
No. It was to a Mrs., what was their last name?
Sharp.
It was to a Mrs. Sharp, but when she opens the letter, it was to Enola. That's why she said, I don't know anybody in Italy. And he says, well, Mrs. Sharp, you obviously do. And it said Mr. and Mrs. Sharp on the letter.
Ah, okay. So I thought it was addressed to her specifically.
No.
Okay. Well, my bad. Excuse me. But it was coming from Milan, Italy. And that's
Yes.
where she kind of took notes like, huh, okay. And then, so to get back home, that's when she runs into Lucille, who, is gone full lunatic here. And when she says that they had to spend the night because of the storm, she just freaked out. Even though nothing had been said about what had happened, she just automatically assumed. And while she was having her little breakdown and started making more tea, that's when Edith noticed the key ring with a key that said Enola on it. So she swipes the key and takes off and makes her way down to the chest. Did I forget something?
I'm trying to remember if she makes her way down to the chest right at that moment, because I know she goes upstairs at some point and she is reading her letter from the lawyer.
Oh, that's right.
And then she opens the letter and sees that it says Enola.
And then she goes down.
Yes, she takes
chest.
the key and goes down to open the chest.
Almost to be like, aha. So she's got her second clue, or third, or however many clues she's got at this point. So
she's had several. I feel like through most of the movie, things have been screaming red flags.
Like the ghosts. But she goes back downstairs. She opens up the chest. She finds like a little gramophone and a bunch of little wax recordings that she takes back upstairs, and she hides out. I think it was in the library or something like that. So like a little,
which I don't even understand, because it's not really hiding out. It's like where the piano and it's like one of the main rooms where you literally see them several fucking times. But she gets the little gramophone things were in the closet where the one creepy ghost face was. She gets the player, and then she finds 3 envelopes that have 3 different cities on them. Yeah. And they're the 3 cities that she remembers her dad talking about, where Thomas and his sister had went to try to get funding for their machine.
So listening to the recordings, getting all these little details, plus we had a cutaway back to America during some point in this time, where I think it was Charlie Hunnam's character, the doctor, is meeting
Alex.
with the lawyer.
Yes.
And information is eventually explained that Tom was already married.
Yes.
So that was like, okay, I've got to get to London or to England, because they're not in London, because they said we got to move to London. Anyway, got to go to wherever they're at, Cumberland House, I think it was the name of the house, now that I'm remembering that. So he sets off over there while she's learning all this information. She finds the document, she listens to the record, she starts piecing it all together that he has been going around with his sister, and they have been scamming women, marrying, taking their money, killing them, da-da-da-da-da-da. So then it's like, okay, well, I've got to figure this out. Now, obviously,
to be frank, there has only been 3.
Only been 3, but still, that's 3 more than it should have been.
Well, yeah. 4 deaths in total so far.
Now, the one thing she doesn't realize is that at this moment, Tom has kind of changed his mind. Like he's actually kind of fallen for her. But she doesn't know that. All she knows is like, well, they're trying to kill me. And I'm trying to remember what happened, because she was aware of the tea, and she woke up again in the middle of the night, pretty much coughing up blood, and made her way downstairs, and I think she was getting ready to leave, was she not? After she realized everything, she was going to leave.
Yes, she wanted to leave.
She couldn't. So
because
of the snowstorm, and then she just passed out on the steps. She wakes up upstairs and in bed the next morning, and then Lucille is obviously bringing her more tea and porridge, and is trying to give it to her. Obviously, she doesn't want it, but she force feeds her the porridge and scraping the spoon.
Yeah,
that was just being a bitch at this point. Just trying to be hateful, and eventually at this point we're starting to get all the details, but at the same time Tom is starting to make it be known that he it's kind of done. Like he doesn't want to do this. He's just like, all right, well, I think we need to stop. He tries to talk some sense into her, but she's too far gone at this point. So Edith, I'm trying to remember here. She's trying to, at this point, she gets up and tries to exit, or she was looking for them, correct? Like something led her upstairs.
I think she fell asleep again and then woke up because of the porridge.
Right.
Every time she consumes the tea or the poison, it knocks her out.
Yeah.
But she woke up and she kind of goes out looking in her little wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because now she's wheelchair bound.
Yes.
To a point.
Which, if you pay attention, so were the other girls.
Mm-hmm.
And that wheelchair is the one that we see the wispy ghost sitting in when she first goes adventuring.
Right.
That you brought up.
But
she comes out and she hears a baby crying.
Yeah.
And one of the pictures that she found was a woman holding a baby. And she sees the woman and the baby. And she tells her that she wants to help her and to just, tell her what I need to do. And the ghost points, towards the attic. So Enola, good Lord. So Edith goes upstairs and she hears a record playing. And she's going to what used to be the nursery. And she opens the door. And as she comes in, you see her face kind of drop. And then you see why, which is her husband, Thomas, and his sister, Lucille, getting all freaky deaky with each other.
And in the moment, you question, is that his sister? Because they did say he was married. So you think, oh, well, maybe this is just like a ruse, so she's not his sister. And then as she kind of runs down the stairs, obviously they make chase, and Lucille grabs her, and she pretty much is on the same wavelength. She's like, well, how could you do this pretending to be his sister or something like? She's like, oh, no, I'm not pretending. And pushes her off the balcony.
And this is like a third story.
Yeah, how she didn't die is beyond me.
No, because she even hits, like, it's got to be due to the fact that house is so fucking decrepit. Because as she's falling off the first balcony, her freaking back, or at least what looks to be her back, hits the second balcony, and then she splats on the floor.
Yeah.
Thankfully, in the nice little snow pile that had been accumulating.
And fun little fact, the actress did that stunt.
Really?
So
damn, she is a badass bitch.
She is.
Go Mia. Go Mia.
So at this point...
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, at this point, everything's kind of out in the open now.
Yes. And you hear banging on their front door.
And who should be right there at the door but our old doctor himself, old Dr. Charlie Hunnam, whose name Alan...
Dr. Allen.
Dr. Allen. He's back again. Or back for the first time because he just got there.
He finally made it there.
Yeah, he made it there because they told him...
He did have to travel from America. Let's not forget that. And this was before airplanes.
And the guy who was at the stable told him it would be a 4-hour walk. Did he walk that entire
a 4-hour walk in a blizzard.
How did he survive?
Because he had that fucking love, man. He had to rescue his lady.
That still just doesn't seem probable.
His penis kept him warm.
I guess. Anyway, so he gets there, and then they kind of do a cutaway to where she's, Edith's waking back up. He's over her, kind of checking her out, making sure she's okay. Apparently he's set her leg because she broke her leg, which surprised us all she broke because I'm pretty sure she broke her back.
Right?
But
like she hit her whole ass back.
Yeah, but whatever. We'll take it. And maybe the ghost saved her. Maybe it was like, nope, you're not, we're just going to flip you over this. Whatever.
Them ghosts are rough, man.
So he kind of is feeling out the situation. Like he knows
something's off massively and he knows she's in danger. He just doesn't know how dangerous they are.
Right. And it wasn't until he tried to give her some tea and she
Mhm.
was like, not that it was like, gotcha.
Yep.
And then he's like, well, I've got to talk to my patient. So if you would just please leave, I'll take care of this. It'll be fine. We'll get her set up. It'll be fine. And then, of course, he turns to her. He's like, I'm going to get you the hell out of here right now. Let's go.
Mhm.
So he helps her up and tries to take her out. Now, I think it was at this point we saw another scene with Tom and Lucille where they were just kind of, I don't know, talking out, this shit needs to stop.
Yeah, Tom wants to let them go
Yeah,
and
like,
says that him and her can run away and, hide basically. And she obviously doesn't want that.
yeah. She's like, nope, don't want to do it. And he's like, all right, well.
So she does make the comment, which I found, interesting. But she says, are you going to do it this time?
Mhm.
And are you finally going to get your hands dirty or whatever?
Right.
Alluding to the fact that she's the one that killed all the rest of them.
Exactly. So he's always been kind of a pawn, just helping do all this stuff, but he has never once been responsible for a death, at least directly. Indirectly, yeah. But they confront the doctor and Edith as they're trying to leave, and he's like, I've got to get her to a hospital. And they're like, we don't need to do that. I was like, yeah, we kind of do. So I'm going to take her and I'm going to walk out. And why he didn't, I understand he was trying to be cognizant of who was around him, but he should have just taken like 20 steps the hell away from him to the wall and just scooted out, because I wouldn't have walked by her. Not in that situation, because what did she do? She turns and stabs him, and in a odd spot too. It's kind of like right up under the arm.
Yeah.
So it's just like, God damn. So he gets stabbed, and then he starts crawling to the door, and Edith obviously kind of slumps back to the stairs, and then Lucille turns to Tom and is like, finish him. But then this is where we kind of see Tom trying to right the wrongs. He goes over there to kind of finish the job, but then he looks at him and he's like, you're a doctor. Tell me where. And then I'll deal with it. Just tell me where to stab. Let's make it look good, and then we'll get out of here. So he kind of points him. He stabs him. So he pretends to play dead. And then as Lucille gets, I guess, distracted with Edith, he takes the doctor, Alan, downstairs to the big red clay pit.
Yeah.
As it were, and said, just stay here. I'm going to go deal with it. But we're going to get out of here. Just hang tight and I'll be right back. And he goes upstairs to confront Edith and Lucille. And let's see. How did this scene go down? So she was up there. Oh, yeah. She was trying to force her to sign that paper. So all the riches can be theirs, I suppose. Yep. And all the meanwhile, also being a bitch, burning all her papers for her book. Yeah,
burning her book.
Which is just, why would you, I don't know. Anyway, so it was in that moment as they're kind of having this little back and forth. Edith is plotting her escape, and she's got her little pen that her dad gave her. We never mentioned that, but yeah, her dad gave her a pen early on in the movie to help write her book. But then she, broke his heart and said, I'm going to write it on a typewriter. And he just looked so devastated. He's like, I bought you that pen. But she has the pen. And when Lucille gets distracted in her rage, she stabs her right in the face.
Well, not in the face. Well, she stabs her right in the chest.
Sorry. All right. Yeah, I was right. She was in the chest. I thought it was in...
No, you're thinking of the wrong person.
Wrong person. Sorry. So, yeah, she stabs her in the chest, right above her heart, kind of toward her shoulder, and kind of takes that opportunity to get away. And then, obviously, she kind of runs into Tom, and she's like, you back the hell up, too. And he tries to calm her down, say, hey, I'm on your side. We're going to get out of here. Just if you'll wait right here, I'm going to go deal with it, and I'll be right back. And he said, if you trust me. So she waits. He goes to confront his sister. He burns the papers that she signed. And then why? This is another one of those why moments. I would have just walked away. But I understand there's history. So why he thought he could talk some sense into his lunatic sister is beyond me. because he tried to say, let's just leave, let's forget it, let's just put it all behind us, and we can all live together. And that was like the wrong thing to say. We, as in you, me, and my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not what she wanted to hear. So then that's when she stabs him, and she stabs him twice, right?
3 times.
3 times. So it was like,
stabs him kind of in the same type of area.
mm-hmm.
And I think she stabs him again in the chest, and then the last one is she stabs him directly in the cheek.
Yeah, and that hurt.
Yeah.
Because, oh man.
Stumbles over, sits on a chair, and you see his eye, and it's like all bloodshot and everything, and then he just so fucking slowly pulls that blade out of his face. And then just dies.
And I've got to give them props for the effect there, because how they did that. Because you watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And none of it looks fake. So I don't know if it was like kind of the combination of CG and makeup, but he's just yanking that shit out, and you're just like, God, fuck, just please yank it out. Like, you just don't want to watch it go on as long as it does. And even just the little touch, like you said, his eye was bloodshot, but then when he had like shed a tear right after he died, you could just see it was like kind of red.
Yeah.
And it's painful. And I hated, he deserved kind of to die, but you kind of also wanted him to be redeemed. So it's just
like, I don't feel like there's any possible way for him to be redeemed as much as I would want him to be. Because if you think about it, in the sense he was, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but one, he was a younger sibling.
Mm-hmm.
His sister was the only person he had. They talk about how the father was abusive to the mother, and the mother was abusive to them.
Mm-hmm.
And she protected him. He protected her. She finally protected him in the sense of killing their mother. And then he gets sent to a boarding school, and then she gets sent to an insane asylum because they were children when, she killed her mother.
Right.
But the thing is she literally, Lucille talks about how when the mother found out about them. So you kind of assume that Lucille is the one that instigated all of it.
Yeah.
So she basically raised and groomed her younger brother probably from infancy.
Yeah. Weird.
And
that is.
He didn't know how to live without her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things, because you can tell he loves Edith, but you can also tell he's absolutely terrified to leave. And it all boils down to he doesn't want to leave his sister.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he did the perversion stuff that he did, because it was his sister. She was all he had. That, she loved him. Nobody was going to love him like his sister.
Right.
It was literally a Norman and Norma Bates, but with brother and sister.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that.
She manipulated the fuck out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's heartbreaking, because he could have been an amazing inventor. He could have been an amazing husband, but he never got to try because of the sister.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a sad story, but I also feel like it's deep.
It can, yeah. And I think there's a lot of, like these, because I know that this is a very controversial story beat that usually gets ignored in a lot of, especially American films and stuff like that. But it's I don't want to say it's normalized in cinema or television or anything like that. But obviously we've seen this type of narrative in something like Game of Thrones, where it's a big part of it. This is the incest part of it is, I guess, what I'm talking about. But it's not common here. I mean, I'm sure it happens in America, but I feel like it's more openly discussed or used in narratives in other countries. I know it's been used many times in Japan. I know that there are a lot of Japanese cinema that utilize that element. So I'm curious if that element of the story wasn't pulled from that, kind of inspired from that kind of cinema. Well, because again, it's not normalized normally anywhere else.
I feel like it's just one of those things that, it's history.
Yeah.
Like, as bad as it sounds, there were kings and queens and pharaohs and emperors and empresses and, chiefs, whatever in the fuck you want to call them.
Yeah.
Hierarchy type people who only procreated with their family to keep bloodlines as quote unquote pure as possible. So it's one of the, like, this story obviously isn't one of those where, they were keeping it like a pure bloodline or anything like that. I think it was just two fucked up children in a fucked up situation, and they found this thing that made them feel good.
Yeah. And I honestly, and again, I understand it's not a topic people want to discuss, but honestly feel like that it works in the movie's favor being that versus her just being some like a wife. Like he was just some woman that she married, and they were just like, oh, let's come up with this wild concoction to go around killing women and taking their fortunes.
Yeah.
That's generic. It works within the context. Like you said, the family that they grew up in, every little element to it, it makes sense. They're not just crazy. They have been made crazy.
Yeah.
And just everything that they've had to live in. And when you look at the dilapidated house, maybe this is why they didn't fix the roof. They were just like, fuck it. Who cares?
I think it's the whole reason why they have to stay there.
Yeah.
They can't live in a society, unless they go into society presenting themselves as husband and wife, but they would have to have whole new names and everything else.
Yeah.
And they would have to move far, far, far away from anybody who would know them.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, I mean, they've literally gone out of their way to entrap and kill 3 different women, and now they're on their 4th one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like it doesn't matter how much money they have, it's never going to be enough. They are literally trying to save, like, it is like a crumbling shell of what it used to be.
Sure.
And they're trying their hardest to save it, but it's like,
and
I don't even know, like...
Well, I even feel like that them trying to save it says a lot about them and their relationship. It's almost like there's the reason they're saving it, there's more to it than... It's almost like if that falls, then everything falls for them. Like everything falls apart because, like you said, if they don't have that house, where do they go? What do they do? They can't be anywhere else, so they have to save this house. Otherwise, they have nothing. They can go nowhere. They are done. So it becomes this last grasp of trying to remain safe in some weird way for them. So, yeah, it's really messed up. And back to the story. So Edith gets out with the doctor, only to be confronted by Lucille at the machine. And she tries to take her licks, but, Edith grabs her a nice big snow shovel. They have a few words, and she tells her to look behind her.
Yes, Edith asks, you see her kind of, like, if you pay attention to her eyes, she's looking at Lucille, and then you kind of see her look almost like behind her, but not like distantly behind her. And when she does that, she says, help me. And Lucille says, there's nobody here to help you. And she says, yes, he is. Look behind you. Look at him. Look what you did. And she turns around, and it's the ghost of her brother.
And he's looking all worse for wear and record time, if you ask me. But it was just the distraction she needed, because she calls Lucille's name, and then she smacks her upside the head with that snow shovel, and then Lucille tries one more time. She's like, I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
And she hits her one more time. She's like, I know.
Yeah, I heard you the first time.
I heard you the first time. And that's into Lucille. So she goes and gathers up the doctor, and as they're heading away from the mansion, you kind of hear that narrative that started the movie. Actually, before she does that, she does kind of put her hand on Tom's face as kind of a goodbye.
Yes, she has a kind of as heartfelt goodbye as you can have. Like, I believe she forgave him because he didn't have anything to do with her father's death, while he was complacent in poisoning her,
Mm-hmm.
we never actually see him administer the poison.
Right.
Like, we see him get tea, and you can assume that the poison's already in the tea, but we know that obviously she mixes the poison in because it's not just in the tea. She was able to add it into the porridge.
Right.
But I feel like his hands are clean in the sense of he never actively murdered somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But you honestly get the feeling that when it comes to Lucille, she didn't just poison these women. It's like she poisoned them to the point where they couldn't fight back, and then she brutally murdered them. Because when you see, the shots of them as the ghosts, like there's one, she has no legs. The one that holding the baby, her face is all fucked up. The mother, has the hatchet in her head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she didn't. Oh yeah, and the one that held the baby, did you notice her ring finger was cut off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. like I said, she didn't just poison them, she brutally murdered these women and took a lock of their hair because she kept trophies. She had her mother's and then all of the women, and then took a piece of Edith.
And we didn't even mention the infant that was also killed, which was actually Lucille's child, not one of the women.
Yes, it was Lucille and Thomas's.
And that was one of the things that they made mention, is that he'd never slept with any of these women, so clearly it was not one of their children. Therefore,
No, she whole ass admitted that it was not the woman's baby, because Edith thinks that it was the one woman's baby, which I don't remember her name, but I don't think it was Enola. I think it was a different woman. But Edith thought it was her child, and then accused Lucille of murdering, the mother and child. And she said, no, that was my child. And she said she would save him, and she didn't. So you assume that's why, Edith killed her sooner, and, chopping off the finger and all that stuff.
So there was that. But anyway, Edith and Dr. Allen walk off out of the gates, and as they're walking out, we see people coming toward them. So that's kind of where they leave it, and we kind of pan back to the house, and you kind of see the red clay seeping up through the snow again. They kind of weave into the house, and then we see that Lucille is at her piano playing away as a ghost. And funny enough, here's a nice little trivia for you. Jessica Chastain was the one playing all the notes on the piano. Like, she learned how to play for the movie.
Heck yeah. That's
So
awesome.
She did good. But yeah, it's like I said, I think it's a great movie. Does have some moments where it drags, but overall I think the narrative is good, and could just use a little trim in here and there, just kind of speed it up at times. But overall, I mean, it's not enough to make you go, oh, I can't watch this because it's so, like, if it was a 3-hour movie, no way.
Yeah, no. It honestly, it makes me think a lot of the Tim Burton Sleepy Hollow that we watched.
I could see that. But I think I would kind of put this a little above Sleepy Hollow.
I feel like definitely with the graphics and stuff like that, it is so much above Sleepy Hollow. But I still feel like, with the storyline and everything, like, it's the perfect mix of, I don't even want to call it horror, because other than like the jump scares and the way that the ghosts kind of come off, it's not as much horror as it is kind of like a suspense type thing.
I'd say it's gothic horror in its aesthetic and the way it's kind of played off. And again, it
I guess
plays
like
on
Bram
different
Stoker's Dracula type of way.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think is like Bram Stoker's Dracula, it is the perfect like mixture of horror and romance. Because it definitely comes off like a very tragic, I mean, it is a very tragic romance.
Well, we might have to revisit Bram Stoker's Dracula for a future episode. Cause
I love
another
that movie.
And I found out not a lot of people have, there's mixed opinions on it, which, again, the older I get, the more I hear things like this, and it just surprises me. But anyway, that's all I got to say about this movie, unless you got any added details.
I can't really think of any other than the fact that the dog dies.
Does the dog die?
Yes.
Oh, well, they don't
When
show
they
it, but you hear it.
but you hear
Yeah,
him,
you
you
hear
hear the bitch ass Lucille go, "Come here, you little," and fucking grabs him, and it yelps, and then it just goes silent.
Yeah.
They didn't have to kill the dog.
I know. Why didn't we see a ghost dog? That would have been cool.
If you notice, and that is one of the things that I do like about the ending, because you do see, Thomas and everything, and she says his, her kind of goodbye without actually saying goodbye, and he disappears. Then when they're going through the house, you don't see any ghosts except for Lucille. So I always like to believe that basically Thomas and all the other ghosts finally got to move on, and Lucille is going to be stuck there forever.
Alone.
Like, that is her hell, being stuck there alone in that house.
Which, I mean, that would be fitting for her.
Oh, yeah.
And there was another bit of trivia I meant to bring up while we were talking about the scene with Tom and Edith as he, like, in his ghostly visage, is apparently there was supposed to be a speech or something that he gave her, like explaining himself in the moment. But I guess as they were, I don't know if they ever filmed it or if it was just something in the script, and they said as great as it was, like everything that he was going to say, and they probably even did film it because the way it kind of sounded, that it was just too wordy. And they were just like, I don't think this is the time for this right now. So when they kind of rewrote it for like what we saw, they said this works so much better because it conveys everything we're trying to say without saying it, and it's just it's better for it.
Yeah, like I don't feel like he needed to talk at all.
Yeah.
Like you saw, like you said, everything was conveyed there. The I'm sorries, the I love yous, the whole, what we could have been, all of that was conveyed just through them looking at each other and her touching his cheek. And then, he, like I said, that's why I like to believe that when he disappeared, that was him going off to a better place.
Yeah.
In the sense of not being stuck there forever. He finally got his freedom. Because that's one of the things that he pleaded to his sister. We can leave here. We can finally be free.
Yeah.
And I want to believe that he got that freedom, and that all of the other ghosts got their freedom, and that she is stuck there by herself for fucking ever.
And that's
in a sinking house, because I don't think we mentioned that. It is literally sinking.
yeah, that's true.
They said every year it sinks lower.
Again, just leave. But again, I think we've discussed why they didn't leave. So
yeah, they got so many fucking skeletons in their closet, they're literally popping out of said closets.
But anyway, Ramblers, let us know what you think about Crimson Peak. You can do that on Twitter at Horror Ramblings. And if you've got more to say and that tweet's just not going to cut it, send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. If you want to discuss horror with like-minded individuals, join us on our Facebook group or join us in our Ramblers room on Discord. You can even find us on Instagram to see an assortment of horror images. And if you're feeling generous and want to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/pencil and paper productions. You can also help the show grow by leaving a review on your favorite podcasting app. Hit that 5-star button if you would, please. It really helps the show. You can tell your friends to find us on their favorite podcasting platform as well. And if you happen to be using Spotify, take a look at our weekly questions and polls when I remember to post new questions. Let us know what you think. Finally, if you prefer a central hub, keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience. And remember, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.